Yeah, go ahead, put your hands together. I need that energy. I'm from the East Coast, I'm from New York, and I'm like, your claps help wake me up. So this is my talk, The Golden Hour. This talk could save the internet. I know I was like, going for a low bar there. The secret role you play in the digital safety and health of the entire internet. And when I was talking to Kat said, it's like, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and like there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I was trying to come up with what's a talk that can reach a lot of different people, regardless of, whether they're like super 007, James Bond, or whether they're like marketing and stuff. So this is my attempt. And this talk goes out to my fam. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, so these slides I'll give to Kat so other people can have them. It's like a pretty chill license, and you can like share them with your friends. All right, so I used to work for this group called GJS, and GJS Security is a hostile environment training and support group, and they're a risk mitigation company. And if you are a journalist and you're about to cover a war zone or a hurricane, if you are an NGO worker and you're going to help a village of people in a place where it's politically unstable, you need to know how to get back home okay. You need to know how to protect the person to your left or right, because there's not always an ambulance or a cab or a hospital even to go to. And that's what GGS specializes in. And they do something called risk-induced learning. So what they do is they kind of like create a simulation of a threat, so you will know whether you are someone who locks up or laughs or runs. All those things are not good, but they need to reach you where you are and teach you how to balance that out and get to safety. And that's my hand there when it was covered in fake blood, Hollywood blood. They had someone with like a blood pack, and like it was like meant to pump like a heart, and it was warm. And I was learning how to like suture and take care of an artery, and it was like, very stressful, but it was designed to be so, right? What was I doing for GJS is I would do like a digital thread. So it's one thing to say you should use Signal, or it's important that you cover your laptop camera, but it's another thing to see a laptop that is compromised and you can see what's going on through the camera. It's another thing to actually like see what it's like when your text messages are showing up on a screen. So we would get confirmation and permission from people, and then create that lab environment so they can simulate that and then walk backwards. And let me tell you, everyone is like, that's it, I'm using Signal or whatever secure thing is after that, all right? So what does this have to do with my talk? Let's bring it forward. The golden hour, and there's this thing that this guy, Dr. R. Adams Crowley, and his first name really is the letter R, which is very awesome. And he says there's a golden hour between life and death. If you're critically injured, you have less than 60 minutes to survive. You might not die right then. It may be 3 days or 2 weeks later, but something has happened in your body that is irreparable, right? And the idea is that there's a golden hour, this moment of time, and what people do, right? Whether they tilted your head or lifted your legs or put a blanket on you or whatever, in those first 60 minutes has to do with what your life will be like afterwards. Whether you'll have a full recovery, and this will be a scary memory, or maybe you'll have permanent damage, or you're no longer with us. Cool. So let's talk about R. So R. Adams Crowley is the father, they say, of American trauma care systems and organized trauma care that saves lives. Before this, there was this idea that if you go to a hospital that's close, you have a pretty good chance. It's filled with doctors and nurses, and it's filled with drugs and medicine. You'll be okay. But he is someone who had experience with shock and trauma. And even in the 50s, when he was in the Army, realized that that's not how it worked. He had a lab, at first with just 4 beds, and they called it the death lab. And people would just bring him, the doctors would just bring him patients, and they were like, there's no hope for this patient. And through trial and error and through real scientific method, he found a way to kind of rule out luck as much as possible and bring those patients to a place where they can be stabilized. Really amazing individual, by the way, right? And in Maryland is where the first shock trauma center is, and it's named after him. Okay, so here's the idea of what the golden hour looks like. You have the things that kill you first, right? Hypothermia, blood loss, your heart stopping. Those are major things, right? And there's a certain amount of time, and there's a chart, and it's important that you learn it. And if you work in an EMS, like an ambulance, you learn A, B, C, D, and each letter is something you should do. And if you were trauma care, like the work that I did with GJS, you learned something called March, because some things don't apply when you're in the middle of nowhere. Okay. The concept of the golden hour is things like treat the greatest threat to life first. Treat despite lack of definitive diagnosis. Treat despite complete history, like a medical history. And the thing there is just treat, treat, treat. Like you're first on the scene, you jump in, do something. So there's this other concept, which is kind of making you're like, wait, I'm in the wrong room. No, you're in the right room, okay? So that's called internet health. And I had a fellowship for 10 months with this group called Mozilla. They make a browser, but I can't remember the name. That's okay. That's for the Chrome people. Okay. And they have a report every year, which is like, what is the internet's health like? And they have different parts of it where they try to talk about, what if we were able to walk around like we had a hospital chart, and we were like, okay, the internet's legs are like this, the internet's heart rate is like that, and we can measure the health of the internet. So how is the internet doing, you're probably asking? Well, I'm sorry, my friends. Those here in attendance and those watching from their air-conditioned, awesome offices and homes, not doing so well. I'm going to walk through what I call the trauma and shock of the internet. So this is kind of like a digital trigger warning. We have an online retailer that built an AI recruiter, which seems like a really good idea. Something to help you go through the insane number of awesome candidates. If you have an opening or open rec for a position in a company, and it's especially those entry-level ones, there's a deluge of resumes and amazing people applying. How could one person do this? Let's get a robot to do it. But in this case, the robot turned evil and was throwing out resumes that mentioned the word women's, which is basically any woman's resume. Not good internet, right? We had that same online retailer that was working on a really cool way to do like facial recognition and using that in images and apps and all kinds of stuff. But the first candidates and the first clients for testing it were law enforcement agencies who at first said, we're not doing this anymore, we're going to stop. And then as of a couple days ago, it was like, we're in phase 2, we're back, right? That is not a good thing. Because I don't know about you, but when I chose to just hang out in a dark basement with my computer instead of playing with all the other boys and girls and gender nonconforming folks, right? I wasn't envisioning working on death machines. I wasn't envisioning on hurting people. I was just thinking of like, how to get a lightsaber in everybody's hands. Speaking about lightsabers, we have this cool sounding thing called Jedi, but there's nothing cool about it at all. Where that same online retailer is probably now one of the only people trying to get a $10 million bid from the Department of Defense. A bid that they say is a program truly about increasing the lethality of our department. I know you thought your department was rough, right? And providing the best resources to our men and women in uniform, where death is the key performance indicator, right, the KPI. Right? We have a maker of friendly productivity software that is somehow embroiled in this kind of immigration debate that's shaking our country to its core and dividing dinner tables. Good luck on Thanksgiving, those of you who celebrate that, right, around the country. We have lead generation CRM software, right? Just keeping track of that contact and see if they want to buy something. That's also now working on border issues and finding themselves in huge amounts of debates here in California. That's where I am right now. Friendly chat app. How could that be wrong? That's somehow used, weaponized to not just convince people that they should vote one way or another or to polarize their political viewpoints, but actually to create physical harm, not just to one individual, but a genocide against an entire group, an ethnic group, identity, right? None of these things were what we as developers and HR people and accounting people, and none of this was on my job description. None of this is what I envisioned for the future. Mm-hmm. So how exactly did we get here? Well, I will tell you that it's not out of malice. It is not out of some crazy, hell-bent, evil comic book character that wants to create this stuff. It's out of good intentions. But these good intentions are not counterbalanced by our own what could possibly go wrong thinking, right? So, you know, you're going to Costa Rica and you're about to jump on a zip line. Something in your body says, I don't know if this is for me, right? Because one thing that I've learned in the risk business is risk is personal. And something that you might say is super risky might be to your friend a totally good idea on Saturday morning. But when that is taken out of the equation, when your agency is taken out of the equation, and your common sense is taken out of the equation, good intentions go bad very quickly. Why are you listening to me? Well, hopefully it's because of that awesome glamour shot of a photo that you saw on the paper outside, or maybe you got a cool email from one of your friends, thank you. But who am I to tell you about this golden hour of the internet? And who am I to tell you what I think you should or should not be involved in doing, right? Is this what you came for, everybody? You're still with me? Okay, let's go, just check, okay. Well, I'm a hacker and I'm a security researcher, and I'm giving you the slides so you can read about all this other stuff. But you know, some of you I've had fellowships with in the audience. Thank you. Those are awesome opportunities. Currently, I work with a group called Tactical Tech, and I'm their director of digital safety and privacy. Okay. I work with the umbrella organization called the Movement for Black Lives. 60 organizations about working for improvement of black bodies inside the United States, keeping them alive and healthy, right? Some of the groups are well known, like Black Lives Matter, and some of the groups you might not have heard of, like Black Youth Project 100. Each of them different, trying to help. I do digital work advising them. I do digital work advising a civil rights group called Color of Change, where I had a fellowship for 10 months, helping them change the trajectory of their organization from one that was an awesome nonprofit to an awesome nonprofit that was aware of digital threats and doing something about it, kind of like how you all do with your amazing digital hygiene. And currently, I'm an advisor to the Internet Freedom Festival, which is an event in Valencia, Spain that happens every year, which I invite you all to, which is an amazing place where you can meet people who are creating amazing technologies, but also individuals in country, on the front line, so to speak, who are using those technologies to better themselves. I'm an advisor to the Open Technology Fund, which is a group that hands out financial awards and support. Maybe you need a red team to make sure your app is okay, right? To anyone who has a great idea and they want to see it happen in the real world. You don't need VC funding. You just fill out a web form, and if they think this is awesome, they will give you a financial award. It could begin at like 200 to 300,000. It can go up to millions of dollars. Some of the apps that some of you might use, like Signal or Tor, are people who are recipients of this funding year over year. I'm an advisor to the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Sometimes someone's freedom is in the balance over a lawyer's understanding of what an IP address is and things like that. But let me tell you, it's probably not as strong as you might think. So I'm here to tell them, like, hey, if you see this in a case, push back a little bit. Maybe that can help you. And to a group called the Human Rights Foundation, which has an amazing event in Oslo, Norway, where I attend to help dissidents and human rights defenders. It's kind of like a TED Talk, and you can watch their videos on YouTube, right? And you can see amazing folks talking about what they face every day. And I work with technologists there, assisting those folks on their digital hygiene and their health, because they face, like, they're very high risk. And of course, I tell you about my time at GJS, who are, I still consider them friends, and I'm always there for them when they need help. Well, no matter what continent they're in or who they're assisting, always great journalists, nonprofits, NGOs, one of the few progressive outfits that does this work. A lot of these people who do this work are intelligence or military, and it's important to have folks like them. Okay. And Tactical Tech, where I work right now, 3 things: our data, ourselves, please learn about that. Exposing the invisible, which is teaching you to be an investigator, and the Glassroom experience, which is a physical kind of like Black Mirror type situation where you walk in and you see real things that might shock you, but they're actually real, well-researched, and you learn more about this stuff. It's happened in New York and London, and the next one's coming up soon. Keep an eye on where it's going to drop. Okay. So what could we do? I've talked about this moment. I said there was a golden hour. I explained why I should have some authority in steering your focus, right? Well, I'm not going to tell you to install Tor and Signal, but those are important. You should do that, right? I'm not going to tell you to have a password manager or about fuzzing or all kinds of cool stuff about application security. But yeah, please learn that if you write code. I'm not going to tell you that there's a weakest link. Like, these doors only have one handle on each one, and if one person doesn't wash their hands, we all get sick, and that's what digital hygiene is, right? I'm not going to tell you about that. There's amazing people here who can tell you about that. I'm going to tell you that It's our job to fix it because we're the best minds around this world. That's what working at this company does. It collects these amazing people who you only have one thing in common with, which was that you both got through the interview process, but you see them more than you see anyone, including yourself in the mirror, right? And there's no one else coming, which is something that we learn every day when I'm working in real world environments. You're it. So you volunteered. That's it. There's no one who's a doctor on the scene. No, that is you, right? Take action. Do something now, right? So I will say detect and find the source of the bleeding, which is local spaces, offline spaces. You have a friend, and that friend is an activist because they wrote a letter to their congressman, right? Or maybe they're an activist because they're marching at a protest, but you have a friend that is the activist out of all your friends, right? You have a family member that is like, hey, should I click on this link and just get my complete internet world taken? Take time out of this hard work that we do to speak to them about the internet that we know and unlearn from them, not just talk to them, but like listen twice as hard, right? I'll play this video 5 times. It's what I do. The patient needs air to survive. You have to breathe in new and innovative, fresh ideas. But these new and innovative, fresh ideas aren't the normal fail-fast ideas that you come up with. They're ideas where you're holding on to what was the good intention that led to this idea, and you're counterbalancing it with what is the negative side effect for all people. Which means there's someone in a village somewhere on this planet, and the tool that I'm making will somehow be used to hurt them or kill them because of their identity. It is such a far stretch, and it is a really hard challenge for me to tell you to do this. But just think like, how could this go horribly wrong in a insane scenario? Because unfortunately, for some strange reason, that's the world we're in. And with for example, hypothermia, don't let the cold numbness set in, right? It seems like these ideas and these concepts and these things that are happening are bigger than all of us, but find small and large ways that you can contribute to fighting these vulnerabilities, right? And for example, don't spread fake news because you went to fullfact.org and you learned about how to fact check on the internet. You can have a 10-hour conversation because someone hit you at the wrong moment. You're like, oh, on Facebook or some other app that you do not use, right? Instead of coming at them with your full, hey, that's wrong. Maybe you can say, let's fact check that together. Check out this link. Let's go through this. Oh, wow, so strange. I thought that at one point too. This is what's really going on, okay? Okay, boom. But most of all, we have to hope for the best because recovery is not guaranteed. There's no one telling you that this is going to be a magic, wonderful ending. Right? I've worked with people who I don't see anymore because they've disappeared or they're incarcerated or the country they're in has taken away their means to travel, right? But you have to know that you did your best and you have to know that you were there and you tried. And that is what keeps you going. That's what keeps me going. Okay, so here's my contact info. Please follow me on Twitter. I'm just a little egg. I'm rushing through my slides because I really want to do Q&A with the people online and the people in this room, right?
One trend that I think a lot of us are seeing in technology is end users' requests to kind of adapt their experience in terms of sharing location, maybe including payment details. What's a good balance between providing users that agency and not having a combinatorial explosion of how can my piece of software handle all these different cases based on what people are interested in doing and sharing?
The question is basically, how can we give users agency and power over their privacy and security settings without creating road bumps and difficulty or even scaring them away from the core thing we're trying to delight them with, which is this app or tool or something like that. Does that sound good? Okay. So there's a UX checklist, which is something that, I was at this event called RightsCon. It happens in a different country every year. Last year, it was in Toronto. But when I was at RightsCon in Brussels, which is the center of the EU, there was this idea, when in my work, we have a checklist for everything we do. It's literally like a laminated piece of paper with boxes on it. You take out a black crayon, and you just put X's through. If you ever read the checklist manifesto, it's because you as a human being cannot be trusted to do high security things because Tactical Tech teaches us in some of the books that that group has researched and done is that holistic security is real. When you're stressed out and you think something horrible is happening or someone's banging on the door, all your amazing skills get dropped, you become a 9-year-old, right? So what if there was a UX checklist? Just something lightweight that as you design your tools and you're working with QA and the core devs and people do interface and design, you all can meet and just be like, well, are we really thinking about this user's this or that, right? And also, what is something that's like a dark pattern in UX that could be wrong here? What is something that, as a person using this in an at-risk environment, I would need to use this still and not have it hurt me? Those are really basic questions, and this checklist exists. It's on GitHub, and I will tweet it out, right? And anyone who wants to add things to it, please do, because that's what it's all about, open source, right? But I would say there was a time when there were no privacy security settings. I was using apps and tools and building stuff as a developer, and it just was not a thing at all. It was maybe something on the server, right? Slowly, we brought that to the front end, and we actually gave users control over those things. And right now, it's like, you know, like my friend Martin's Prius, really simple buttons. But one day, it'll be more nuanced controls and dials as the need comes. But we have to meet people when they need them. And you know, there are other tools out there like this app Signal where it's designed to have no advanced mode, no settings, because it itself is designed to be at the most high-risk setting. And that's another way that you can blow past having that problem, right? So yeah, anyway, next question. Thank you, first question. I will find a prize for you. Yeah.
John asks, Matt, what are your thoughts on the current state and potential of automation in detection/mitigation of threats during the golden hour, and how that approach be integrated with human expertise for maximum effectiveness and efficiency?
Thank you. This is a great question, and it's about my thoughts on how we can leverage computers to assist us in responding faster in this most delicate and dangerous time, right? And we already, anyone out there who's a bug bounty person, who is like spends nights and weekends looking for software flaws and getting gift cards or t-shirts or maybe 50 bucks here or there, will understand and tell you that you can no longer just sit there and do this stuff by yourself. These apps and tools are not built by one person, and so you're not going to detect your way in. No hacker, no nation state hacker works that way. We use fuzzers, we use computers, we use all kinds of different things, right? Those are the tricks of the trade. If you're a capture the flag person and you're playing the games where you're red team or blue team or purple team, or if you don't even understand what I'm talking about, computers are used now by the most elites of people in InfoSec and cyber to do that. And the only good thing about this is that the adversary is mostly human-led and computer-assisted. But in the future, and in what my friends who are telling me from like different parts of the world they're seeing more, are completely automated threats. Like very dumb Roomba-level intelligence, but a hacker that's persistent and hammers at things all day and knows like the OWASP top 10 and is already doing that stuff, right? But that hacker is not a human being, is scanning the internet or scanning a particular place like industrial controls in Ukraine and just looking for a way in. One day, that hacker is going to be on some Terminator 2 level of intelligence, and we only can stop it with automated help. But we have to have that counterbalance, and we have to always have some human level. Which is why, like, if you look at the most dangerous of weapons, whether they're nuclear missiles or something that can completely disrupt political events, there's usually a human involved, and not just one human in case they're compromised or something happens, right? So that we know about this nuclear football, and I think like that is how we can move forward. I'm happy to tweet out examples of things that we could be using right now to just make our code safer, to make our stuff safer, to just scan stuff and just look for code smells and weird things that we might not have thought, right?
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you. I had a question about the golden hour in the context of climate change. So obviously computing is very resource intensive, and we have no shortage of fun ways to abuse the hell out of CPUs like Bitcoin and stuff like that.
Right.
And to the point where it might even take up resources greater than entire countries. I wonder, do you have any thoughts about the intersection between this sense of urgency behind being an active person in the technology space and climate change, what we can do?
Sure. Okay, well, if you're living on the planet today and you're breathing, you really should read climate change studies that just been dropped by the UN and other environmental groups, because you're an intelligent person. You're probably one of the smartest people in your friend circle, and you need to be you need to understand what's going on, right? So this question's about how do us, the people who we're the team here, we're working on computers and technology, and those computers and technology. One thing I teach people at Crypto Harlem is every website you go to is a box with a cable going into it and a power cord. Like that's it. You go to all these amazing digital tools. They live on this planet. They create and consume heat and electricity, and they are damaging this planet that we live on. And because of the surge of things like, there are economic conditions that create people needing to do crypto mining, whether it's Bitcoin or Monero or other things, right? So what are we doing to offset that? And honestly, we're not doing enough. You can take a flight across country for a corporation, and you can offset that carbon footprint by saying, hey, I'd like to check this box and let's plant some trees. But you can't say, hey, what is a measure of my team and my work that's damaging the environment, and how does the corporation I work for use that money that they might support a 10K or my nonprofit stuff? By the way, if you work anywhere, please understand the company you work for will pay you to get a day off and help a nonprofit or help a good group, right? Or run a 10K. But one day we'll take that funding and also offset the work of our keyboard tapping and our servers and all our labs and the QA costs. There are some people, for example, this group Greenhost, which is an ISP and a data center that's completely designed to be environmentally friendly, right? And there are people who are pushing for open hardware initiatives, which will do this. We need to get behind this. Otherwise, there's literally blood on our hands. And when our the younger generation of people on this planet are coughing and wheezing and asking what we did, we're going to say we actually created problems for you, right? And we need to say we were coding a better future, but we're also not destroying the planet while we're doing that, right? So thank you. Does that feel like a good answer? But yes. Online person, real world person. I know the question's inside of you. Let it out.
What do you think about the prospect of sort of increasing futility of OPSEC and hygiene? We, even if you opt out of virtually everything and all the advantages that technology offers, everybody around you is engaging in that. You could be mapped,
yes,
and tracked and
yes,
identified, even without opting in.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm working with folks who need to go underground. They just need to be safe. Whether you're an investigative reporter or someone who's a source that helped an NGO do amazing work, but you're living in country at risk, and you cannot be on the grid at that moment. It's too hot. You need to just go somewhere. And it's hard because there's shadow profiles. It's hard because your phone going off is an indicator that you're missing from this pattern. And computers and AI are looking at those patterns, not sleepy security guards, right? So there's this idea, because I believe your question is, what about OPSEC in this increasingly digitized world, right? And I tell people, this security nihilism, they can see everything anyway. There's nothing we can do here. And I work with people who are working and operating and doing amazing, they're heroes, doing amazing things in the most authoritarian, totalitarian regimes, right? They still get up every morning and try. And it's, I think, disrespectful to them to even think I don't need my YubiKey today. It's because the actual threat has different levels of skill. And your life shouldn't be ruined by a bored 12-year-old, right? You should have earned, that high-level nation-state, advanced, persistent threat. They're the ones that got you. They're the ones that ruined your day. Because, we have this idea of defense in depth. You build the moat, then you get the archers, then you have the drawbridge, and only the most agile and persistent attacker or threat is going to get through all of that to touch you. And most of the time, people who work 9 to 5 to hurt someone, they're never going to win against someone who's working all day for liberation of their people or advancement of an amazing cause. And so if I had this idea creeping in my mind, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So definitely shake it off. Most of the time, it's quote-unquote fake news. And you'd be amazed what amazing stuff you can do and what these people do every day, right? So thank you. Great question, John.
Yes, we will get to that.
Stay tuned.
Scott asks, could you describe some new threats that you see on the horizon? As a result of these new threats, where should companies be investing to mitigate these risks?
Yes, okay. It's really weird, and this is kind of why I'm talking about this way. When we think about digital threats and digital hygiene and cyber, we don't think about socio-political issues and economic issues and things like that. But that is where these threats live now, right? So there's this idea of an insider threat, and that threat is you. You will be compromised at one day, one point. Maybe some silly piece of unverified fake news is making you think something that is not true, right? Maybe you got a gambling debt and there's a bag of cash conveniently left at your front door. You pick it up, you're like, that's weird. And then the next day they're like, hey, I saw you use the bag of cash. Here's 2, no questions asked. When it gets to 3, it's like, I'm gonna tell everyone you've been working with me, which is, that's weird, but it's true in a weird way. And now you're owned, right? So the threat is going to be these weird curveball threats. They're not things like, oh, spear phishing's up. It's more things like this person who I work with every day who's disaffected and disassociated and sad, they're going to be compromised. I myself am that person. I will be compromised because the thing you love will be used against you. You love chocolate cake. You love Oreos. I love Oreos. Never eating another Oreo could be the thing that makes you, just look the other way. Or maybe it's helping someone you care about. Maybe it's your friends or your family. And it's weird because this is the new age that we're in. And our corporations and our organizations and our friend circles are ill-equipped and prepared to deal with this right now, right? And these are some examples of the threats that are coming for us, right? Or random threats where I'm a well-spoken individual on social media and all of a sudden there's an amassed troll farm that's being paid. And I've seen these places where it's a small village or a town where a teenager can make what is equivalent of someone's annual salary, right, for working there and just creating and sending hate mail at you or something like that. But it's all not random. There's something or someone behind this, right? I always tell people when there's a small win in an awesome space, something that changing the status quo for good that we all are happy about, someone's experiencing a small loss, right? And when there's those rare headline-grabbing big wins, someone's experiencing a big loss, and this is their game. They've never lost. And you become very, very popular to them. You don't realize it, but you're the thorn in someone's side because of a tweet, right? And that is what the new threat looks like. And now you have personal attacks against you. So anyway, more questions. Thanks.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Yes. Honored.
When you're conducting your crypto Harlem sessions,
yes.
What are the protections that you find that people are most receptive to? And then what are some of the tactics that you find people are more resistant to adapting?
Okay, well, I'm lucky because I'm working with a high-risk group, which is marginalized people, right? In this case, it's like black folks in the inner city. So they're kind of like looking for an antidote to the poison of what's going on, right? In Harlem, there's it's like a petri dish of all kinds of weird new crime-fighting technologies and surveillance technologies, and a municipality or city, they don't need to always pay for this stuff. Like the company's like, we need year-over-year data. Here, take it for free, right? Like, why, you'd be fooled, like, why would we turn this down? We're basically getting free stuff that might help, right? And then all of a sudden, you have an area of your city or your town or a province in your country where it's different from everywhere else, where there's almost like checkpoints, where almost like everyone lives in a different life, and because you're not always there, you don't see it. So maybe that might be Oakland for people who live in this region. Maybe there's one street that's so weird, but you don't experience it, and people there don't ever leave it. And that's where this is growing. And the things people are receptive to are stuff that just immediately solves that problem. When you're dealing with people who are marginalized and they're therefore pushed to the margins, whether it's LGBTQ, gender nonconforming folks, whether it's people who are not, don't have US passport privilege, right, and they're hustling and just trying to make this American dream happen, they're susceptible to all kinds of strange things that we're not always aware of because we're not seeing it every day. And they will grab at setting up two-factor, you bet. Using secure comms on their phone, they got 3 apps. They're like, I want to download that. The more resistance I find is for people who are less directly affected. Maybe they love someone or care about someone who's directly affected, and then the least is someone who, these things seem so obscure. And even the idea when I tell people this stuff is happening and I show them my research or show them photos of it, it just seems so bizarre. You just can't wrap your mind on it, and that's where the resistance is. And that is actually by design, right? So by the time this stuff reaches them, it's done, right? Like when they're directly affected, we lost. So my goal and my hope is try to do stuff you wouldn't normally do and really empathize with the folks around you. They're living a different world that you might not realize. Anyway, that's it, right? That question was like, what do people who are marginalized or crypto Harlem specifically use more than other things? But mobile phones Everyone in the inner city's got a mobile phone. They don't always have laptops. They can consume technology and they can use stuff, but they can't create. And they're innovative folks, and they can't create. It's really weird. So they're purposely consumers, and I try to reach them there on their phones. Okay.
You mentioned that young people share their thoughts in online platforms and then are affected or compromised when a friend in their circle is accused of a crime. Quote, black people have 2 degrees of separation. Can you explain more about that?
I can. First of all, again, that question is, I talk about how black people have 2 degrees of separation. I talk about how young folks online are sharing their lives, but then not everyone has the same price for that share, right? The DJ of Crypto Harlem is DJ Blackout, right? But his name is Jelani Henry. And Jelani lives around the corner from me, and he spent 14 months in Rikers Island prison, which might not mean anything to you, but in New York, it's one of the worst places you could ever be. Like, there's a huge initiative to shut this place down. He was spending his time waiting for his day in court in one of the worst prisons in the United States, with murderers and killers and horrible people, but also with awesome people who just have been like on the wrong side of the law, or awesome people who couldn't pay $10 bail and are now spending a year in prison. And he was one of those people. If you go to The Verge, which is a website, which is not a Google website, I don't know why, but and they talk about reviews on electronics and technology, but this story resonated with them, and they wrote about it. So if you type in NYPD Harlem Youth, you can read the story, no fake news, you can get the details, and it's a lot richer than what I can explain. But that's just one case of a real person. If you, there's a blog called The Intercept, which is Glenn Greenwald and Laura Portrias and a bunch of other folks and a bunch of my friends. Shout out to y'all. And they had an article on this thing called a gang conspiracy charge. And a gang conspiracy charge is a charge that's used to stop gangs, and it doesn't require large amounts of evidence. The evidence could literally be you clicked thumbs up on a post, right? The evidence literally is, in these cases, your phone number is in my cell phone, right? In places like Anaheim in California, there's these things called gang injunctions. Another thing to stop gangs where you can sue a gang. The gang obviously does not show up to court, right? And you win. And what happens is in certain parts of this neighborhood, it's illegal to have more than 4 or 5 people meet. It's illegal to wear certain colors or wear certain outfits or even stop at a corner or bring tools or bags with you. If you want to learn more about this, there's an Al Jazeera documentary called Anaheim, or it's called Fault Lines because it's a series, Anaheim, California, and you'll learn about this and it'll blow your mind. And get the details. I want you to be really critical and push back on everything I'm saying, because the hard truth is actually harder behind this stuff. And I know these people, and they're amazing human beings who still fight against this stuff, right? And it's happening to people you might see on the Caltrain or on the BART, right? And you don't even realize it. Great question, Anonymous, and dope for being anonymous. Respect.
Thanks so much for your talk. It's very enlightening. One of the questions I have is that you talked about kind of considering the negative side effects that can come from the products or technologies that we create. And I think you also mentioned some of what's going on in Myanmar with their political and social situation. Yeah. And when I've heard about that, one of the concerns that I always had was that, as a sheltered Silicon Valley bubble American, it's really hard for me to conceptualize the social and ethnic challenges that many other places encounter. And so it's really hard for me to be able to conceptualize the negative side effects of the products that I create. And so I'm really curious as to what strategies you might have in mind for being able to consider these negative side effects for other cultures or societies that I'm not necessarily familiar with.
Thank you for asking this question. All right. So again, this question is, listen, I'm here in my bubble, and I'm trying to do this thing you told me. Think about the negative consequences of this amazing product or tool I'm working on. But like, Myanmar is really far, and I got like 5 days, maybe 10 of vacation, So what's going on? We do user testing for our products, internally and externally, whether it's Starbucks gift cards or people who are part of a user testing group in-house. Do user testing for this challenge that I've given you. And that might be finding out if there's a place where Rohingya gather in your immediate, maybe like 5-mile radius. If you have American passport privilege and you're in this amazing country, you'll find that these people are actually like living right here. You'll be like, oh wow, this delivery person who just brought me my food is a Rohingya, right? And they just dude's just living in a community center and with his family right down the street from me. And they will love to tell you their story. They will love to share. And you can anonymize your tool and app and be like, how could this be maybe not like good for you? And they be, yeah, right here, you asked this question right here. Yeah, they use this to get us, right? That's all it takes. It's just this weird paradigm shift. And then all of a sudden you see a completely different world around you. So if you I challenge you to spend 60 minutes on a little bit of search engine and a little bit of social media. Hey, HiveMind, does anyone know anyone who's from Myanmar, right? You will immediately be face to face with someone who can help you take on the Mat challenge, right? So thank you. And at the end of the day, another thing is, I'm directly affected myself. I'm part of a marginalized group. Hats off to people who aren't, because you could actually choose any issue and say, like, you know what, I just identify with this. I read it in the newspaper. That's my thing. I'm just adopting that thing. And just do that, maybe just for a year, maybe for 2, right? I tell myself that I always say I have the luxury of having a lot of these issues directly on my doorstep. I wouldn't do this maybe if I could opt out, if I could sneak out the back door. But there are people who'd be like, nah, brother, what you doing? You forgot us, right? So, so much easier when you're not directly affected. Just give up the next year or maybe 3 years in. So rotate, cycle out, pick an issue, jump in. I don't know if I would do it. I'll never know if I would do it if I wasn't. And thank you for caring, all right? Next question, do we have time? Person?
How would you approach the trade-off between pushing for stronger overall security, for example, browsers requiring HTTPS, and breaking things that at-risk users might depend, for example, services that aren't updated? Both sides seem important.
Yes. Okay, so this question is, how do we balance pushing what we feel is better for the people, right? This is better for you. Come here, line up, take this shot. It's better for you, right? HTTPS everywhere. Or breaking a service that we know people depend on. Right? That might be like, there might be life-saving aid behind a website that's not secure. And when that site doesn't load in like Chrome browser, which is the only browser that people use, that might be like they can't get that aid, right? That decision is a difficult one. But like any good rapid response person, you're not making it on your own, right? If I unfortunately have to make a decision to amputate somebody's arm or their leg or their finger or their hand, I don't just be like, yeah, this looks pretty bad, bite on this leather strap, right? I can say, listen, here's what's going on, right? Or stay with me, hold my hand, I'm with you, right? This looks pretty bad. I think we might have to suture this or put a tourniquet here. And that might mean you lose it, but it will definitely get you alive out of here. They will tell you, don't do it. I'm a runner, I love my legs, right? Or they will say, I want to get home, right? To my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my romantic partner, right? Let's do this. So don't make the decision on your own. It's too heavy a decision. But elicit as many minds as you can, and then you got to do it, right? Because a lot of this stuff is, I'm going to take a pen and stick it in your windpipe and just so you can breathe. You got to make that decision. You're the only one around. Don't be afraid. Step forward and take it and own it, because you're trying to help. And trying to help is a lot better than most people. So if it means that site is blocked and messed up, people who are directly affected and marginalized, they'll lose that site for a week. They'll all get together and read whatever they need to read, and let's encrypt that thing and certbot that thing, and they'll have HTTPS the next day. Someone will. They'll find a nerd, I guarantee you. So I hope that helps you. It's a great question.
I think we see a lot, and I'm trying to figure out how to best formulate this question. This just fundamental distrust of large institutions. Many of us work in a large institution.
Yes.
And there are people who want to make change, but we don't want to be perceived as biased toward one side or the other. And then there are people who are doing great work on the ground to try to make this change. How do we engage in a way that can still enable trust with other people as people who are part of a large institution? And then also, how do you get people to trust you is it because you're not necessarily affiliated with large institutions? Do you do purposeful things to try to mitigate that, or do you find it's just like the nature of the information that you're bringing that gives you that kind of credibility?
Okay, so this is a great question, and it's about how do you deal with being associated with a large institution and the lack of trust that people have of those institutions, especially when you're just trying to do one small good thing, right? Is that a good way to, okay. So I'm part of a large institution, many of them. Some of these groups and names, maybe you've heard of for the first time, but in my world, they're huge. Way to go, Matt, right? So when I talk to people about OTF funding, And I'm like, listen, you're making this amazing app. This cryptography is awesome. And you're working with a group that's like marginalized. This is great. And you're doing it with 3 of your friends over bubble tea every other weekend. You can get money to do this, no strings attached. Like, you can properly keep this going, because a lot of the awesome tools that we use and may point people to are barely holding it together. It's a person who's nights and weekends, and you don't realize, but they just broke up with their partner, and their landlord's like, yo, what's up with the rent? Like, it's so scary when you look at some of the tools that we point to, what's actually running behind it. People who don't understand what it's like to work with project managers or with code that's always updated and has comments and commits, and you can get blamed like any hour of the day with all these different developers touching it. That's not how most of these tools are built. Most people would be, but just 2 seconds of your time on how they could work would blow this thing like, you know, sky high and make it awesome, right? But they wouldn't trust me, because they'd be like, yo, I heard the State Department runs Tor, or something weird like that, right? Or, yo, the feds make Signal, or something like that, right? None of that's true, by the way. And what I do is how you build trust with anyone, right? Your institution is always going to be hated, because haters want to hate, right? But people who need help, they immediately want your help. Like, no matter who you are, like, let's say like a neo-Nazi is choking on a hot dog, trust me, he wants the Heimlich from me, right? Because they want to live. Self-preservation rules out above all things. So you're not worried when it comes to the directly affected people. If you're in the right place, that help is appreciated. I guarantee you, right? Because it was needed yesterday. Now, if you're in the place where it's a little bit yellow, not red, like traffic light, right? Then you got to build trust. And trust is earned, not granted. So it begins by just being like, listen, I work for, let's say, Google or something, right? But I'm a person. I'm a human being. And like a bank teller has a picture of their loved one facing you, that's because they're trained. That's what keeps you alive. When you're humanized, that's what keeps you alive. When we work with journalists and NGO workers and nonprofit people, and we're like, look, this is how you survive imprisonment. This is how you survive kidnapping. It's by being humanized, right? It becomes difficult when people who are holding you see you as a person, right? They know that song you like, you told them, oh, whatever. They don't stop punching you, but they pull back on those punches, right? They don't stop giving you horrible food, but maybe they give you, two meals when no one's looking, right? You build that trust slowly, because it's earned, and it'll be zero the next soon as you push too far, right? And that is a long game. So when I work with a lot of communities or a lot of people where I'm not have this built-in trust, I just show up, and I'm like, listen, I'm unpacking my thing that you hate. Yeah, we did some bad stuff. Yeah, that's horrible too. But let me tell you about my auntie, Hi, auntie. That's a little Black Panther joke, okay. So, but you could be like, oh, let me tell you about my family, right? And that humanizes you. You're like, hey, let's eat. Eating is key. Everyone needs to eat. Meet them where they eat. Love their favorite food. Bring them some more of that the next time. It's a long game. Like, I'm talking about months before you even start. Then all of a sudden, they're like, when they smile, when they see you, when their eyes light up a little bit, almost like you're their friend, but they're still suspicious, that's your moment. That's when you start. So we need to temper back that will and that want. I want to do good right now. If you really do, you have to wait. You got to build that trust and understand that trust, that when people see you coming and they're like, that's real. That's not for no reason. They're right, okay? But you're good. And this is bigger than that, all right? So I hope that helps. Thank you, Googlers, for the work you do in this place, delighting people and changing the future of technology in this world, right? The work you do outside as human beings whose families are so proud of you because of who signs your check, right? Understand the power that you wield. It's amazing, and I'm so proud and humbled to be in front of you, right? Okay, thank you.